both emperor fire and minister fire, they have something that protects and connects and communicates for them. So we know that the heart has this thing called Shinju or Shinbaolo or pericardium, all those different words that you can use. So because the heart, of course, it's the emperor, it's in the void, it can't do anything, it just has to be in the void. It has to be there, able to communicate with the world through the open windows, that kind of thing. But so it needs the minister.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological. When I lived in Taipei, I loved to visit the local temples, which are everywhere. Tiny ones tucked away in some back alley just wide enough for a scooter, sprawling complexes up in the mountains, and one of my favorites was the raucous Longshan Temple over in the Wanhua district near the Snake Market. Wanhua is an old part of town. Other than the subway station, it did not at all feel like modern Taipei. I love the Longshan Temple because it instantly took me to another world. The chanting, incense, kaleidoscopic flow of people, always in constant motion, old grannies praying for health, students lighting incense in hopes of passing an exam, middle-aged women making offerings to Guanyin, candles, the clack-clack fall of the quarter-moon fortune-telling blocks, high school kids hanging out, business units offering particular prayers to a specific deity because they don't hire business consultants to fix their business practices. They hire a swanming. They hire a fortune teller to advise on what rituals will bring up the quarterly balance sheet. I felt lost when I first arrived in Taiwan, and even more so the first time that I visited Longshan. Stranger in a strange land, I fell in love with the place. I would visit it often to imbibe the noise and stillness of the swirling prayer wheel that is the Longshan Temple. Towards the end of my time in Taipei, I went for one last visit to light some incense of appreciation, to reckon the years, to impress on my heart one more time the chaotic magic of that place. And as I was leaving, a middle-aged woman struck up a conversation with me. Her English was surprisingly good. Now, I usually only speak Chinese in Taiwan, but if someone's English is better than my Chinese, then I'll switch to my native tongue. The Taiwanese are polite and supportive, and they tend to compliment my Chinese, especially when I'm speaking it poorly. It's both sweet and tremendously annoying, but I'd come to some peace about the lie of the quality of my Chinese, and for my own twisted entertainment, figuring that turnabout is fair play, I'll often compliment the Taiwanese on their English. So I comment on the quality of her English, and her English is good enough that she says thank you instead of the usual Taiwanese, no, not me, nali. And then she says, of course my English is good. I'm Catholic. This is why I love the Longshan Temple. Catholic? English? I am not connecting the dots here. And so I ask her, and she says, well, I went to Catholic school, and I'm still lost. And then she says, well, we spoke English at Catholic school. And now it's making sense. Missionaries have been in Taiwan for a long time. In fact, the Vatican has an embassy just down the street from the famous Ding Tai Fung dumpling place. But what is a Catholic doing walking out of a temple built to honor Guanyin? It turns out her mother is Buddhist, and she's ill. Quite sick, in fact. And so she's here on her mother's behalf. Let that sink in for a minute. Jurisdiction. Her Catholic God has no sway in the affairs of her Buddhist mother. I learned a little something about respect in that moment. It's probably something I should consider more in my own clinical work as well, to respect those parts of my patients that are dear to them, but foreign to me. Meeting others where they are without story, without blame, or desire to see the world as I do. It's not easy, especially when I think I have some answers that would be helpful. I have to remind myself, jurisdiction. How can I be helpful to my patients in a way that they are able to take it in and take it forward? How we think about the world influences our perception of the world. Learn a system of acupuncture and it gives you a window into how to use acupuncture in a particular way. Study a school of herbalism and you'll be able to see patterns you did not previously notice. It's not that something is right or not. More the question is this useful? Change your frame and your capacity to perceive, it changes as well. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear-Don't-Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
In this conversation with Deborah Woolf, we puzzle through some questions I have had about the earthly branches after she taught that module in her recent Qiological Live seminar. We will be referring to some charts that were part of the seminar, and you'll find those over on the show notes page. It will be helpful to have them handy as you listen in on this conversation. There are some surprising resonances that we uncover in this conversation. So let's get into it. Hey, Deborah.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you for joining me again for some questions, this time about branches. We're going to dig the earthly branches.
Okay, let's dig away, man.
We're going to dig away. I so appreciated your presentation the other day, and it just, God, it brings up questions, and then it just brings up these like glimpses. I wonder if this other thing is true, or am I just making shit up, or might there be something here? So
well, I might not be
this.
able to answer your questions, but I can always give it a go.
It's great to have a go. So we're talking about Earth, and we're not talking about space. We're talking about time.
Yes.
The heavenly stems relate to space. Earth relates to time. And
Yes.
And you were also talking in the presentation about your fascination with the Zulu clock, right? The Chinese clock.
Yes.
And one of my takeaways from that talk was that while we usually think of the organs as being related to the 5 phases, and we all know something about that because of our training, and that's, very fundamental to most schools, we can also look at the organs in the channels in relation to the seasons. Now, yes, there is a correspondence with the seasons, liver, spring, that kind of thing. But there are some other ways of looking at the seasons. Well, I'm bringing up this chart that you have here, right, that you shared with us. And, we have the lungs at the 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Well, the 3 o'clock time, then comes the large intestine, that kind of thing. But you were also talking about, I'm going to try to get at this. It's a little hard to get all into words, how we can look at the entire human life cycle on the clock as well. So, for example, we can look at, and I'm going to bring this up so that we can see it here, that you can think of the lung phase as birth. And then you look at like the digestive functions, the stomach and the spleen. These times are like childhood, adolescence. We're coming into adulthood about the time we get to noon, to heart time, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this idea that as we go further along, we have death, dormancy, the void, and then there's the embryo and pregnancy. Is in the deep, dark,
hidden part.
The hidden part, which is also the nighttime part. So,
or the winter time.
Exactly. And, and we have a sense of that kind of thing just from our regular studies and just, because we're humans and we look at life and we live life. But this idea of including dormancy, the void, in the embryonic aspect of our being, as being hidden and in the dark. This is a little bit new for me. And I'm always trying to hone things back to clinical work. And so one of the questions I have about this is if we are working with people who would like to have children and they're having trouble having children, so often, we're going to work on the kidneys, we're going to work on the spleen, kidneys in particular, right? And we're looking to do that thing with enhancing their Jing and all of that. But I'm wondering if we could work on their triple burner, if we can work on those organs that are in that deep, dark.
Well, absolutely. I mean, oh God, now you're going to get me started on something else. So first of all, I want to say that time is a cyclical thing. So the seasons are a cycle. That's normal. There's the springtime when you get the visible beginnings. There's summertime when everything flourishes. There's autumn when you see visible decline. And then there's winter, which in the Chinese, in the Neijing, it says is the time for storage. And that's actually the hidden part. It's the bit where you can't see anything. And sometimes we also talk about the idea about different types of beginnings, that you can have the hidden beginning, which is what happens in wintertime. And then you can have the visible beginning, which is when things come out in springtime. Yeah. This idea about the cyclical movement, you can see that you can divide that in terms of 4, the seasons. You can do that in terms of 5 when you look at or 10, the 10 stems. That's also, you can have that as a life cycle divided into 10 parts, or 12. You can have it. So we can do that in any number you like. Do you know what I mean? Really, it's just that usually time is counted in cycles of 12. And so it turns out to be 4 parts. Each part can be divided into 3 different parts, if you see what I mean. Okay, so that's the whole idea about the cycle of time, and that really life begins, or the spark begins in the hidden aspect. It always starts in winter. It's just that we're stuck with when we see it, and we only see it in springtime or in wood.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, when you're talking about the clinical aspect, of course, we could use Sanjiao, the 3-heater, and the gallbladder very, very effectively, especially the gallbladder, because the gallbladder, to help pregnancy. And this is where we go off on a tangent, because I told you, I'm obsessed with the gallbladder, because the gallbladder is the epitome of the hidden beginnings. The gallbladder branch is the time that includes winter solstice. So it's the deepest, darkest moment. And at that deepest, darkest moment, that's when you can, you really have they call it the astronomical beginning of the year, because we all know that the year really, we see it start in springtime, but actually, if you're looking at astronomically, meaning looking at where the Earth is with relation to the sun, then it's only after winter solstice that the light comes back. Yeah, hence we have Christmas, Diwali, whatever, all the light, Hanukkah, all the light festivals, for instance. Yeah, that kind of thing. So we kind of know that. Yeah. Also, I'd like to point out that the gallbladder is an amazing organ. It has many, many relationships with prenatal and with Jing. It's the extraordinary foo. It's the only foo that is an extraordinary foo and a normal foo. So extraordinary foo, if you don't know, they're shaped like foo organs, but they have the function of a Zhang organ. So they store things. And what do they store? They store some kind of type of Jing. And the type of Jing essence that the gallbladder stores is actually called, we call it bile. But really in the Chinese, it's called Qingjing, clear bile, actually. So do you see what I mean? Yeah. The other extraordinary foo, you've got the brain, the marrow, the bones, the uterus, and so on and so forth. There's a whole chapter about it. But anyway, the gallbladder is the only one that is both a normal foo and an extraordinary foo. And the fact that it's an extraordinary foo gives it a link into essence, into Jing, first of all. And the other thing I want to point out is that the gallbladder on the channel has many points that relate to the kidneys. For instance, there's gallbladder 39, which is the Hui point of marrow. So marrow is like the cream of Jing. So immediately that's a good way to sort of deal with Jing and kidneys and so on and forth. There's gallbladder 25, which is the moo point of the kidneys, for God's sakes. Yeah?
Yes,
so,
yes, there it is.
Yeah? Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. And there was something else that you said in the presentation about the gallbladder being related to water.
Yes.
It was almost a throwaway comment. It was like, gallbladder related to water. Wait, what? I also wanted to ask you.
Yes.
So how does that aspect of it being related to water fit in here? Because water takes us right into kidneys and right into Jing.
Absolutely.
And the whole kidney
Yes.
noodle.
And so here we need to remember that it's related to water, as is the 3-heater and also the liver, because of their position on the Chinese clock. They are seasonally winter/water.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I see it. Right.
Yeah. Now,
Right.
the liver is a little bit different because it's the earth. So it's the end of the winter season. So it's got a relationship with water, but it's got a strong relationship with earth because earth helps move from one season to another. We talked about that before. But especially the gallbladder and the three heater. And again, I mentioned that, isn't it interesting that the gallbladder and the three heater go around the ear? And we have lots of kidney pathology, lots of ear pathology, because of course the ear is the orifice of the kidneys. And sometimes we have to deal with the kidneys, but sometimes actually we can deal with that ear pathology, kidney related pathology, using the gallbladder and the three heater. And perhaps that's because of the fact that although the gallbladder is wood phase and the three heater is fire phase, they also have this water seasonal relationship.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code Qiological for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Yes, and there's also that aspect that when you look at the levels, they're both Xiao. There's Xiao Yang and Xiao Yin.
Yep.
That connects as well.
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Sometimes I start to see different resonances or correspondences. Again, am I making shit up that's not there? Or is there like an X on a treasure map that would behoove a little bit of digging into?
Yeah. I mean, I think, really with this short series, what I tried to do was to try and kind of like open the doors so that people might get little inklings of things, and then that might inspire them to look a little bit further, because obviously there's no way that I could talk about the whole of stems and branches in 3 short sessions. Do you see what I mean? So I just wanted to kind of just trigger little bits so that people would go, okay, maybe it goes like this then. And then they try and sort of find out a bit more.
Yes. Well, I think you've done a terrific job of putting that taster together.
Thank you.
In a way that makes it accessible, but doesn't nail it down to the point where like, oh yeah, I know a whole bunch about that because I listened to a few hours of it. It's like, no, I listened to a few hours and I'm like, holy smokes, what did I get myself into?
Yes. I'm still wondering myself.
Yeah, well, that's kind of part of the fun, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So still connected here, talking about the pericardium, the triple burner. They're down here in the like dormancy and void. When you're looking at the clock this way, and I'm going to have this up here. People can download this and look at this chart. I want to go back to birth for a moment, because we start with the 10, but as you so well point out, it becomes the 12 at birth because the heart, which previously just would send blood from the mother over into the child, right? There's a septum in the middle, and it closes. Now blood gets shunted to the lungs because we are breathing air in this world. And now we have the 2 unformed organs. No. Yeah, they got no form, but they got a function. Triple burner and the pericardium. This is actually what gives us life. And I'm looking at this image here. They're in the deep dark as well. They give us life, but they might also, again, that resonance of help to create life in the deep dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing up in both of those places in my mind. There's this correspondence.
Yes, and we also know that minister fire, it's kind of more than this. Yeah, minister fire is the fire of our maintenance, and it's the fire of Ming Men, as opposed to emperor fire, which is the fire of our heavenly fire. It's the fire of our creation. So this is more like the Shen, it's something to do with heaven. So you can say that, emperor fire is more heavenly and minister fire is more earthly. And both of them, both emperor fire and minister fire, they have something that protects and connects and communicates for them. So we know that the heart has this thing called Shinju or Shinbaolo or pericardium, all those different words that you can use. So because the heart, of course, it's the emperor, it's in the void, it can't do anything, it just has to be in the void. It has to be there, with a able to communicate with the world through the open windows, that kind of thing. But so it needs the minister, which is the pericardium, to do the pumping of the blood, to do the job for the heart. It needs to communicate with the rest of the empire. It needs to connect, yes, and it needs to somehow kind of envelop the heart, communicate, envelop, connect for the heart. Yes, that's what the pericardium does. And then for the other fire, minister fire, which is something like the fire of Ming Men or the moving chi between the kidneys, or there's lots of different ways of describing it. Then that also has something that connects and communicates and kind of protects it. And that's Sanjiao, that's the three heater. That's why the three heater has got these three jiaos. Basically, it's rooted in Ming Men. And then it kind of brings Yuan Qi, which is the universal catalyst, all over the body to do what it needs to do when it needs to do it. So it's bringing the fire of Ming Men in that transformed action of being Yuan Qi around the body. So that's like the protection, connection, communication for the fire of Ming Men, if you see what I mean.
I'm getting it. Deborah, I've been at this Chinese medicine thing for over 20 years. And I got to tell you, sometimes I feel like a total idiot because I hear terms like ministerial fire. And sometimes I kind of get it. And sometimes I'm like, what the fuck are we actually talking about? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. And the way that you've just described it is useful and helpful to me. And as I think about the triple burner and the pericardium as being a yin-yang pair of function, of how life comes into being and is expressed in this world through these functions. And, we talk about the Ming Men fire, we talk about the Yan Qi. We're talking about these aspects in us that were not there until the moment of birth and the heart divides.
Yeah, the septum closes and then the first breath, and then suddenly the channel system starts running.
Yes, and we've got these two fires.
Yeah.
And they're the fires that keep us alive. And when we look at them on the clock, they're way deep in the dark.
Yeah.
We look at that resonance. So again, as is so often the case, and it's easy to talk about, and for me, it's really hard to understand, yin-yang, we have these apparent differences that, and of course, it's easy to look at the polarities and go, this is this and this is that, and they're really different because, look, they're opposite. To really grasp that unity, that's where I think the medicine really starts to work, when we can start to grasp that unity.
Always goes back to yin yang, doesn't it? And that's just such a massive thing. You could spend your whole life just writing about that and thinking about that, I think.
Well, I remember teachers saying that when I was in school. Well, it all comes back to yin yang, and I'm thinking,
yes.
am I ever going to understand that shit? It's like, that sounds really easy, but it's not.
It's interesting as well, because in the 12 phases, the 12 growth phases, this picture that we're looking at, it's interesting because dormant and void, which is the pericardium and the three heater, they're the two ones that don't have any kind of physicality to them. All the other ones, from embryo all the way to death, is actually physical, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So that's one interesting thing.
Function, no form.
Yeah, exactly, which is quite cool, isn't it? And then another thing that's very interesting, which I've really sort of brushed over when I was talking about the branches in the presentation, because I thought, oh God, this is going to be too much. But I mentioned it ever so briefly, is that there are these hexagrams that are related to each of these 12 positions, each of these 12 branches. Each branch has a hexagram, and they're called tidal hexagrams, because what happens is that they start, it's like the growth of yang all the way up to its peak. So it goes one yang line, and then two yang lines, and three yangs from the bottom all the way up to six yang lines. And then there's the growth of yin from one yin line all the way up to six yin lines. But what's weird is that you don't get full yin in the gallbladder, which is midwinter solstice or midnight. And you don't get full yang in the heart, the prime, which is summer solstice or midday. Actually, it's slightly offset. This has always got to me, and I think I might have sussed it now. The full yin is actually in Sanjiao. It's in the three heater just before the gallbladder. It's in the void. That's all yin. And then all yang is actually at adulthood, which is in the spleen, in the snake opposite. How cool is that?
Well, it's what keeps the wheel turning, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's very cool. So that's been a bit of a revelation to me. And there's another thing that I haven't talked about, because that's another thing, is that there are also these gates, and they relate to this. There's like the gate of heaven and the door of earth. There's the gate of ghosts and the gate of humans. And those coincide with where these four lines are that are dividing the four seasons. But that's another sort of slightly sideways area, very much to do with sort of divination and stuff.
Well, I'd like to explore that, but not today.
No.
Yeah, no, that.
Sorry. Gone off on one.
I've already got enough here on my agenda for the day.
Yeah, very sorry, Michael.
That would be worth looking at. And yeah, so the heart, there's a little bit of yin in it. So this brings me to, and I'm going to bring up this slide so you can look at it, this fabulous idea. And I remember getting it when I was in school. They said, look, you could put the earth in the middle, or you could put the earth on the side. Well, earth in the middle. Of course. Where else are you going to put the earth? And in the idea here, again, we're talking about cycles and things kind of getting a nudge into the next one, that we have the last part of each season, the last 18 days, is actually the earth portion of that season. It's what allows us to end one cycle and move into the other. That makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. And it occurs to me, again, I'm just going to throw this out and see what resonance it sparks with you, that at the turn of each season, there is an opportunity for a harvest. That before we can move into the next season, we have to harvest the living and whatever we've done in this season before we can move to the next one. And we have this 18-day period for some reflection, for some, how do I say this? An opportunity to actually pause and be nourished by our experience of living through that season. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm thinking about this. So first of all, you use the word harvest. And I've got a problem with the word harvest, because in the Chinese medicine, in the classics, they're very, very clear that different seasons are seasons for different things. And the one that is to do with gathering is always autumn. So we're definitely not gathering. However, then I listened a little bit further to what you said, and I started thinking about the yi, which is always erroneously translated as intention. And I've got a real problem with that translation. Because if you look at the character, what it's got the character yin, which is that musical tone, of which there's 5 musical tones that I talked about when I talked about the stems. And then right underneath is the heart radical. So what you're actually doing is you're tuning in to the tone of the heart. That's what the yi means. So it makes sense to me that when we get to the end of each season, what we do is we tune back in to the sound of our heart, to the tone of our heart, which is a little bit like I'm looking at where I'm at here. I'm digesting and transforming everything that has happened so far. Mm-hmm. And until I've done that, I cannot move forward. So that would make sense to me.
Thank you. Yes, that's helpful. I use the word harvest with some trepidation because I also consider harvest to be part of the fall. And it's like, really, digest and transform does get closer to it. I'm wondering if there's another, well, I mean, I like playing with words, so I'll go play with that. But yes, it's this moment in time. We can take what we've lived. How does it fit? What do we hold on to? And what do we let go of? And what has transformed and needs to be brought forward in the next season? It's a kind of a sifting. I have an image of sifting something, panning for gold.
Or like what is it? When you're walking around with Google Maps, I don't do this very often because I don't really like to have things that tell me where to go. But I want to see, like on the map, I want to see further. I want to see where my destination is so that I can see if I'm pointing in the right direction. And Google Maps doesn't really like that on my phone, and it keeps asking me to recenter. And recenter is come back where you are, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of thinking about, it's a recentering. And, of course, the earth is about our form, our physical form. So we're coming back into our form and we're sort of recalibrating, which is back to that listening to the sound of the heart thing.
Yeah, it's a moment of recalibration. So I suspect it might behoove all of us, especially as practitioners, to consider that 18-day between the seasons as a kind of sacred. I'm a little uncomfortable with words like sacred, but let's just say it's a moment of great potential.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is, and it's also a time where traditionally they say that, you use the earth. So there are sort of seasonal points that at those moments, those 18 days, you can use to help really kind of transform one season into another for us. Yeah.
Yep.
And it doesn't always have to be stomach 36. Just saying.
No, because we're looking at it in a much broader context.
Absolutely.
Stomach 36, but
yeah, come on.
We're looking at it. Yeah, of course. I mean, you could look at it that way. You
can definitely use stomach 36, but I mean, you can be much more creative than that.
You could be much more creative. And this is one of the things I really appreciate about this stems and branches is it looks like kind of I've used the word source code and I'm going to stick with that because it seems like that. It's not prescriptive, but it's descriptive. And if you can describe it well, then you can figure out what needs to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if I was making a religion, I would say 18 days between the seasons would be a major piece of it.
Well, it looks like the Japanese really go for it because, when I was trying to find out more about this, because that lady talked about a doyo, and I thought, oh, okay, so I'm going to look it up. And so then I found that it was the characters for Tu and Yong, and that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. But then actually the Japanese have got a very specific one where you specifically eat eel in the doyo period, because that form, that slippery form, it's damp forming, maybe because it's like a, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? A snake, maybe. Do you see what I mean? And they use it at that time. And I thought, oh, wow, that's fantastic. They're using the food to help move the earth at the right time. How cool is that?
Well, if I have to go eat unagi
during
this period, well, okay.
Bring it on.
I'm down with that. Oh my God. There was this great place in Taipei that you could go and you get like a box of unagi, right? There'd be a little box and there was like the rice and then just a big hunk of unagi. Oh, it was so good. You have it with beer.
Stop it.
Oh. All right. So, maybe for the next, Tu Yong period, we should meet in Taipei and go eat some eel.
Good idea. I'm up for it.
Okay. Me too. All right. Moving along. I've got a chart here that's blowing my mind. All right. I'm bringing it up. If y'all are listening to this, it's the branches and phase chart. So, Deborah, you can see this. It's starting with the lung. Metal. It starts with metal. We've got the lung, and then we got the colon. And I see that the lung, which is yin, hand tai yin, let's call it by its full name, this is a yang branch?
Yes.
Okay, like, right. And then, all right, little mind blowing. And then I'm looking over here at the large intestine, the colon. It's the yin branch.
Yep.
What,
Yep.
what
So,
up?
well, there's a bit more than this. So for both the stems and the branches, when you look at there's two different ways of looking at yang and yin. One is the first half of the cycle is always yang, and the second half of the cycle is always yin. So the first 5 stems are yang, and the last 5 stems are yin. And the first 6 branches are yang, and the last 6 branches are yin. That's overall like a sine wave, a big sine wave. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then after than that, you have a smaller cycle of yang and yin, and that's from the whole thing. So the first one is always yang, and then the second one's yin, and then the third one's yang, and then the fourth one's yin, and so on and so forth. Now, so that means that odd numbered stems and odd numbered branches are always yang, and even numbered stems and even numbered branches are always yin. And that actually fits very much with what we know of generally with sort of odd and even, like, this is one of those kind of universal constants that they never tell you about, is that in this created world, yang comes first, and it's to do with odd things, and yin comes after. First there's yang, and then there's yin. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Yang initiates and yin responds.
Exactly. Yeah. So whether we start the year at the midwinter solstice, which is the gallbladder branch, or that's the hidden beginning, or if we start in Chinese New Year, springtime, which is lung branch, those are actually both odd numbered branches. So they're both yang. And then the next one has to be yin.
Okay.
The branch is not the same as the channel. They are different concepts.
And how are they different?
I think that's a really difficult question. Just like the stem is a joining of the yun movement and the organ, so it's not the same as the organ. Do you see what I mean?
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Yes. So you're talking about the great yun movements.
Yes.
From the stems.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? So there's a stem is a joining of the yun movement and the organ. They're two different parts, which have got slightly different cycles. And then when we look at the branches, those also have 2 parts. One is the channel, and the other one is the seasonal aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're back to that seasonal aspect again.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I don't grok it at this point, other than it's an X on a treasure map for me that says dig here.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. I don't have it yet, but I feel like my compass is lining up with your chart. So forward.
It's also slightly more complicated, I think, because when we talk about stems, I can talk about 5 phases and people know something about that. And then I talk about yun, the movements, the big cycles.
That's really different.
It is different, but it's still a system by 5. So I can kind of make some kind of comparison once I can explain that they're separate things. But when we talk about branches, then I have to get into the story of Tai Yin, Yang Ming, all that kind of stuff. And there are these things that you can call conformations or you can call divisions. They have many different aspects. So part of the problem is that people they might not have learned the different aspects of what's going on. And so it's difficult to approach it. Like here, I'm talking about channels and I'm giving them their proper name and calling them Han Tai Yin. And this is already a problem because most people will say, oh, that's the lung channel. And I'm saying, no, that's hand Tai Yin. And when you write hand Tai Yin, then you know that that's also linked with foot Tai Yin. Yes. And immediately that gives you a relationship between the lung and the spleen that you hadn't realized. Do you see what I mean?
I do see what you mean. And I know for myself, I've made all kinds of, I'm going to say, errors in logical typing because in my mind I say lung, but I'm also thinking hand Tai Yin, but I'll often confuse it because I use the shorthand. I go lung, and that means one thing, but it could also mean, it's not a but, it's an and it also means hand Tai Yin, which also means as part of the great yin channel that includes the spleen. It depends on where you put your focus.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very important that we use our language with this kind of stuff. I think it's very, very important that we use our language as precisely as possible because otherwise we get into this like placemat at the Chinese restaurants like, okay, there's your animal and you see it in one dimension. Or we look at it here and go, well, I kind of see 2 dimensions, but there's actually 5.
Yeah. No, I think I totally agree that you have to be very precise in your language.
And that the lung and the stomach both have yang branches. Now, this is interesting, and here's why this is interesting to me. And I've asked you this question before. I have been snooping around in the classics, and I've been asking people, and I've been trying to figure out for myself these Sa'am organ pairs that I've been working with, that I learned from Toby, that they use in the Sa'am acupuncture, where they take the lung and they don't pair it with the large intestine. I mean, you can. They pair it with the stomach.
Yeah.
Right? And I know it's really effective in clinic. This stuff is really helpful in clinic. But I keep wanting to go into the classics. I want the Yellow Emperor to like point it out and go, yo, dude, look.
No.
Lung and stomach, there it is. I haven't seen it.
No, and I haven't seen it either. But I tell you why. I think one of the reasons, because I've thought about this business as well, because of what I know about the conformations, the divisions, and I think one of the reasons why the lung and the stomach work really well together is because basically you're hitting 2 conformations, 2 divisions at the same time. And instead of having the yin-yang pairing of the channels, lung and spleen, which they're both yin, Tai Yin, what you're doing is you've got hand-foot. What you're doing is you've got hand-foot crossover and dryness and dampness crossover at the same time. And that gives it more power.
I think that hand-foot is a little bit like a turbocharger or something. I mean, it adds a little bit of juice somehow. Now, you can get that dryness. Well, no, I'm just, because I'm looking at hand Tai Yin, hand Yang Ming, they're both dry.
Yes, exactly. So the fact that you've got lung and stomach, lung is dampness and stomach is dryness. Yep. So you're getting hand and foot. The lung is the hand and the stomach is the foot. And you're getting Tai Yin and Yang Ming, dampness and dryness. And so you're doubling up the effect. What you're actually doing is you're using the yin yang hand-foot pairing within one of those 3 big loops that I talked about before. And each of those loops, 3 big loops, has got a hand, a foot, a chest, a head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's both 2 sides, like a biaoli, an interior-exterior climatic relationship. So I think the mixing of hand and foot and damp and dryness gives it that extra oomph.
I think it does. And, but again, I want to see something literally written in the stars, right? Or something that's...
You'll be lucky.
Yeah, well, but I'm looking at it here, and I'm looking at lung and stomach. They're both yang branches. I'm looking at large intestine and spleen. Again, that's a pairing.
Yeah.
They're both
Yeah.
yin branches. You can go all the way down this chart, and it's laid out for you. This is why the heart and the urinary bladder are so helpful. They're both yang branches.
Yes.
Holy smokes. Yeah, so I don't know if I have any more to say about that other than this is the first time that I've seen something. Well, it's not the first time because, we have this idea that the Xiaoyang and the Dui Yin, they treat each other. And we have this idea that the Tai Yin and the Yang Ming, they go with each other. We know that from our very basic 5 element.
Yeah, but that's because they've got this kind of interior exterior type climatic relationship.
But seeing this branches, this yang and yin branches piece in here, I feel like I've got something else. Again, source code, something else I can go into, look at that might help me to understand it a little bit better. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It's very satisfying to. Okay. Moving along, we talked about invisible and invisible, and the trigrams and the clock. I think we're pretty much about what I wanted to cover here today. I'm just gonna browse through. Oh, yeah. The Sanhe, which I'm bringing up so we can see it. And if you're listening to this, you were talking about how there's this. It's basically an equilateral triangle, isn't it?
Yeah, this is. These are concepts that you have in feng shui and bazi. But what I find really interesting is that these concepts we mirror these in the body. It's always the same thing, is that we have these things in the body. So if you have a look at any sort of Chinese astrology, and a lot of Chinese astrology books talk about branches, they don't talk about stems at all, because they're talking about the psychological aspects, the animals, all that kind of stuff. Oh, you're a dog, you're a pig, blah, 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 blah. And if you read those, then they'll say, oh, yes, well, if you're a monkey, that's the bladder branch, by the way, then your best friends are the dragon, that's the stomach branch, and the rat, that's the gallbladder branch. And if you actually bother to look at that, then, hey, that's the 3-leg yang. So for us, it's really easy.
Literally written on the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mapped onto the body.
Yes. When it says, these are the rules of heaven, these are the rules of earth, and then underneath it says, and humans also respond to this. We're literally built that way. There's no joke here.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I very much appreciate about taking a dive into this material. There's a lot of little throwaway one-liners that we get in Chinese medicine school. I don't know about other people. I listen to it. It's like, oh, that's the way it is. Okay, why is it that way? I don't have any idea, but that's the way it is. And it looks like there's some other resonances here in relationships. Okay, good enough for me. So you swallow it and believe it's true, and then work with it for a couple decades and go, wait a minute, how's this stuff work again?
Yeah.
And so to be able to see these kind of mappings and reflections this way, the channel system is, the heavens mapped onto our physical being.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love how you talk about the channels as being that interface between what's inside and outside.
Well, that's what they do, isn't it? They're sort of dealing with the Zhangfu on the inside, and they're dealing with the climates on the outside. They've got this kind of double relationship.
It makes Chinese medicine sound really easy until you then start to apply it to
But it means that you can look at climates inside a person and then think about how you can deal with those climates. Or you can look at people who have a problem with particular climates on the outside, and then you can use the channel system to adjust, to tune them up so that it doesn't bug them so much. So like that person that always gets affected by wind, do you know what I mean? I can think about, okay, which channel relates to wind and how can I deal with that to settle them down?
And we've got all sorts of ways that we can go with that.
Yes.
Depending on who that person is. Maybe we work on their liver. Maybe we disperse their gallbladder. Maybe there's just not enough fluid inside of them, and so they're dry and windy. And so you would want to take a look at the spleen in that case. I mean, this is, for me, the joy of doing Chinese medicine, because it's like so intricate and different for each person. And it's the deepest, most difficult thing about it, because every time you sit down with someone, it's like, all right, what are we doing today? It's like, what are we actually looking at?
Yeah, there's lots of different windows you can look through, which I really like, that you can use different tools for different situations. I love the fact that it's not prescriptive, and you can really sort of be very, very aware of what you're doing and apply things in as general way as possible. I really like that.
Yes. Well, again, I think I use the words, it's descriptive, not prescriptive.
Yeah.
And the better we can describe it, the more that comes into view. We get a more nuanced picture.
Yeah.
And once you have a good picture, well, gosh, now choosing a treatment shouldn't be that difficult.
No, I don't think so. And I don't think it needs to be mega complicated either. I think, you can, I truly believe that the body wants to heal, wants to be sort of in balance. And so you don't need to do a lot. If so long as you're kind of quite clear and straightforward about what you want to do, you don't need to do a lot to be very effective, basically.
Well, this is one of the tricky things about practice. I know many of us were taught, well, you've got an idea and you go after your idea, make a diagnosis, treat accordingly. Oh, throw in these few extra points just to cover your bases. I find that is never helpful. Number one, it muddies it. And number two, it muddies the message that we're sending the patient. But I think even worse, I get more muddy in my own mind. If I can keep a clear focus on what it is and just treat what it is, I think that makes a difference somehow. I think we interact with our patients differently.
I totally agree with you. I think, literally, if you excuse the pun, the more pointy you can be in your sort of prescription, your point choice, the more effective your treatment is. Whenever I choose some points and a synergistic combination, I think it has to be a synergistic combination, not just a random bag of points. And then if I think, oh no, I should add this and I should add that, that's when things just don't work very well. I feel confused. The patient doesn't get better, so I can tell that I didn't really have a very clear view then.
Spot on. Absolutely. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky for me, because days are different. And there are days I feel kind of on. I can kind of see it. I can dial things in. It's like, oh yeah, there it is. Got it. Clear as a bell. Those 3 points, done. And then there's the days where I'm just, I'm just not in it that well. And on those days, I tend to treat differently because I can't see it. I can't get it clearly. I try to do no damage. I try to do something like more harmonizing and balanced than pushing on whatever the imbalance is a little bit harder, like I would on a day where I can dial it in.
Yeah, I agree. There are some days when I'm not feeling very adventurous and I'm feeling a little bit cloudy in myself. And then I'm much more like, okay, I'm just going to sort of root and ground and make sure that person is as okay as possible, but without doing anything too crazy. Mm-hmm. Some days I'm quite happy to be crazy and turns out quite well.
It often does, as long as we don't get too full of ourselves. I can't tell you how many times I thought, oh yeah, I see it. watch
Yeah.
this. And then
Oh dear. I know what you mean.
there really is something about humility.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is other than it keeps me from going off the rails. It's like you don't want to believe your own bullshit.
Yeah, I think got to go back to that keep it simple thing. Whenever I'm sort of going a bit mad, I just think, well, hang on a minute. Is this yin? Is this yang? Is
Yeah.
this blood? Is this chi? That kind of
Yeah,
thing.
my go-tos are deficiency or excess. Am I looking at deficiency or am I looking at excess? What am I looking at? That's the one that always grounds me back in. Yeah, I guess we all have a go-to that will help us to get back on track. Yeah. All right. I do believe that is it for the questions that I've had. This has been wonderful. Thank you. And I
Thank
hope
you.
people that are listening to this find it useful as well. There will be a set of slides over on the website so you can follow along and see what Deborah and I were looking at as we were talking. And actually, before we wind it down, is there just any, let's see, maybe we're just done. I'm always wanting to dig in a little bit more. I just have that inquisitive mind. But I think I'm just going to leave it where it is because sometimes it's helpful just to take it in and let it gel. This is the energy. This is the energy, at least for Michael Max, of that 18 days in between seasons. Don't push too much. Don't grab too much. Just let it be and let it settle and sift. See what comes out. So
Good idea.
now, aren't we?
No, we're in summer solstice time. We're in heart branch. We're in Wu branch.
So we're actually out of the Earth phase at this point?
Yeah, we're not yet in the Earth phase. Still got a way to go. We're right in the middle of summer now. This is the middle of summer.
That's right.
We're at
So
the peak.
the Chinese calendar.
Next
Yes, I know.
week,
I
actually,
know.
is the peak.
Again, this is where my Western mind and my Chinese mind, they trip over each other's feet. Because in my Western mind, I'm looking at it and going, oh yeah, we're coming to the end of spring, beginning of summer. That's the shift of the seasons. But no, because summer began in early May.
Yeah, I don't know why there's this kind of crazy idea that Westerners have, which I've never really understood, where people say, oh, this definitely happens in England, where you get to summer solstice and then people say, oh, great, summer is beginning. And I'm like, hang on a minute, summer solstice is the peak of summer. So it's downhill from now on. What the hell are you talking about? Summer started 6 weeks before now. Not now. You're off by 6 weeks.
Well, again, there's that idea that the beginnings are unseen. If you're using the Chinese eyes, you see that it begins in May. And I saw it this year, Deborah. I saw it. I was sitting in the back room, which looks out on the backyard, where there's birds and flowers and trees. It's like a little meadow in the back. It's kind of cool. And the lawn had been mowed 2 days earlier. 2 days. 2 days earlier, the lawn had been mowed. This is early May. I'm sitting and I'm looking at the backyard and I go, man, this is looking shaggy already. 2 days.
Wow.
2 days, right? Oh, it's getting a little bit rough and shaggy. Oh, it's flourishing.
It's
That's
flourishing.
exactly what went through my head. It's flourishing. Oh, right. Beginning of summer. And there it was. I saw it being expressed that way. So
yeah, that's really interesting. You're right, is that Western mind sees beginnings when they're really visible, but Chinese mind at least used to see beginnings when they were still hidden. And I remember reading this very cryptic thing when I was reading, what was it? It was the first I Ching that I'd ever read, and it was the Richard Wilhelm translation, the introduction to the Richard Wilhelm translation. And it said something like, when you see a tree grow, you don't look at the growth of the tree. You need to think about where it started. You need to go backwards in the life of the tree or something like that. And I remember thinking, what the hell is he talking about? But now I get it.
Well, in the beauty of this, in the beauty of the Chinese clock, and the beauty of looking at the seasons unfolding in this way, is we can catch the momentum of it.
Yeah.
It makes
we can be prepared.
Yeah.
Be scouts.
Yes, exactly. So, all right. Well, As ever, this has been a true delight. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next time we go and noodle on things.
Thank you, Michael.
At this point, after sitting in on Deborah's 3-part Qiological Live series on the stems and branches and having the opportunity to ask her some follow-up questions in both this episode and on the earthly branches, that was episode number 255, which covered the heavenly stems, I think I'm beginning to cotton to how this Chinese philosophy science might be a kind of source code for our medicine. And I was delighted to find out how the yin-yang resonance of the Sa'am organ pairs shows up here in the earthly branches. It makes me want to dig deeper into this study. If you'd like an accessible introduction to the stems and branches, do check out the 3-part series that we did with Deborah. You'll find it over under the Classes and Seminars menu on the website.
Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.